What if I told you that right now, sitting in the Golden State Warriors front office, the most dangerous threat to organizational clarity isn't coming from rival teams or salary cap constraints, but from the siren song of nostalgia and emotional narratives that could trick the franchise into making one of the worst roster decisions in modern basketball history? What if the mainstream media is actively promoting the dismantling of a dynasty based on a post-game hug and emotional exhaustion rather than actual operational mathematics? Welcome back to the War Room. Today, we're conducting a forensic audit on one of the most seductive and dangerous narratives currently circulating through the NBA ecosystem: the supposed eviction of Draymond Green from the Golden State Warriors. And I need you to understand something from the very beginning. This isn't about whether the Warriors' championship window has narrowed or whether the core has aged. This is about protecting one of basketball's greatest franchises from a decision that could absolutely obliterate whatever remaining competitive advantage they possess. Let's establish the baseline, because the mathematics here are absolutely brutal and unforgiving. In the hyper-analytical, mathematically ruthless ecosystem of the National Basketball Association, the mainstream media frequently makes a critical mistake. They confuse human emotion with corporate policy. They see a lingering hug after a playoff elimination, and they declare a dynasty officially dead. They watch a head coach embrace his players after a brutal loss, and they construct entire narratives about organizational dissolution. That's not analysis. That's poetry. That's emotional journalism masquerading as basketball intelligence. The narrative surrounding Draymond Green's supposed eviction from the Golden State Warriors has completely detached from operational reality. The mainstream media is pointing to a post-game moment, a lingering embrace between Stephen Curry, and Draymond Green after their play-in tournament exit, and they're framing it as closure, as an acknowledgement that the core is broken, as a signal that the Warriors organization is ready to move on from one of the most important players in franchise history. But that narrative is built entirely on mythology, not on mathematics. That narrative ignores the actual spreadsheets, the actual contract realities, and the actual strategic motivations that govern professional basketball front offices. Let me show you exactly what's actually happening here. In the boardroom, in the offices where real decisions get made, emotional exhaustion does not equal contract termination. A lingering hug does not void legal contracts. Nostalgic frustration does not drive asset liquidation decisions. Steve Kerr loves his core. Steve Kerr absolutely adores Draymond Green. Kerr respects what Draymond has meant to the Warriors organization. But Steve Kerr does not balance the checkbook. Steve Kerr does not make the final decisions about roster construction. Mike Dunleavy Jr. balances the checkbook. Mike Dunleavy Jr. makes the final decisions about roster construction. And Mike Dunleavy Jr. is operating on cold, hard mathematics. The Warriors have reached a state of kinetic fatigue. The dominant, league-dictating geometry that made Golden State the most feared franchise in basketball during the 2010s is mathematically depreciated. The core has aged. The athletic tools have diminished. The competitive advantage has eroded. But you do not completely liquidate the biological anchor of your defensive matrix just because the season ended on a melancholic note. You do not dismantle the connective tissue of your entire system because a coach gave his players a long hug after a playoff loss. If Draymond Green is moved, it will not be foreclosure. It will not be because Steve Kerr is emotionally exhausted. It will be because his kinetic output no longer justifies his percentage of the salary cap. It will be because an elite, championship-level upgrade presents itself that mathematically improves the roster geometry. It will be because the return on investment no longer makes sense. But here's where the mainstream media completely misunderstands what's actually happening in Golden State. The media is pointing to the trade deadline talks surrounding Giannis Antetokounmpo as proof that the Warriors are ready to move on from Draymond. They're suggesting that the inclusion of Draymond Green in exploratory trade packages is an admission that the franchise wants to dismantle the core. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of front office leverage. That's a complete misreading of what those trade conversations actually meant. Think about what you're actually proposing when you're attempting to execute a hostile extraction of a top 3 apex predator like Giannis Antetokounmpo. You're not just trying to acquire a great player. You're trying to pry loose one of the most dominant forces in professional basketball from an organization that has absolutely no incentive to trade him. The Milwaukee Bucks are not going to hand over Giannis for a package of bench players and protected draft picks. The Bucks are going to demand foundational championship-level assets. They're going to demand the kind of return that makes the trade mathematically painful for the acquiring team. If you're attempting that kind of acquisition, you cannot offer a package of role players and future considerations. You must offer championship-level assets to even get the Milwaukee Bucks to answer the telephone. You must offer players who have proven they can function at the highest level of professional basketball. Offering Draymond Green in those exploratory talks does not mean Mike Dunleavy Jr. hates Draymond. It does not mean the Warriors are ready to move on. It means Dunleavy understands the mathematical cost of acquiring a Greek supermax asset. It was not a Oslo protocol. It was an attempted corporate upgrade. It was a front office saying, if we're going to make a move for Giannis, here's what we're willing to put on the table. That's completely different from saying, we want to trade Draymond Green because we're tired of him. But here's where the situation becomes genuinely complicated. And this is where the real strategic dilemma for the Warriors becomes absolutely clear. The mainstream media is desperate for the dramatic breakup narrative. They want to write stories about the end of an era. They want to declare the dynasty officially dead. But they completely ignore the geometric void that will be left behind if Draymond Green is actually traded. If you trade Draymond Green, you are mathematically erasing the primary processing unit of the Warriors' defensive architecture. You are deleting the connective tissue that makes Stephen Curry's off-ball kinetic movement viable. You are removing the player who orchestrates the defense, who communicates assignments, who processes information at the highest level, who makes everyone around him better, who absorbs those high-leverage defensive assignments if Draymond is gone. Jonathan Kuminga? Kuminga is a talented player, but he doesn't possess the processing speed. He doesn't have the basketball intelligence. He doesn't have the experience managing elite offensive players. You cannot simply replace Draymond Green with a younger, less experienced player and expect the defense to function at the same level. The Warriors are trapped in a genuinely difficult middle ground. They're not dominant enough to win a championship with the current core, but they're not bad enough to justify a complete rebuild. They have Stephen Curry, one of the greatest offensive players in basketball history, still operating at an elite level. They have a franchise that's been built on winning and organizational excellence. They have a front office that understands how to construct competitive rosters. But they're caught between two impossible choices. Either accept that this core is aged and cannot win a championship, or make a massive, risky upgrade that could either elevate them back to contention or completely destroy whatever competitive advantage they still possess. Liquidating Draymond Green without a guaranteed, elite biomechanical replacement arriving in the exact same transaction is an act of executive suicide. It's a decision that instantly closes whatever microscopic window Stephen Curry has left to compete for another championship. It's a move that would leave the Warriors in a worse position than they're currently in. The Golden State Warriors are indeed approaching a breaking point. The championship window is closing. The core has aged. The competitive advantage has eroded. But the mainstream media is writing poetry instead of analyzing the actual spreadsheets. They're constructing emotional narratives instead of understanding the mathematical realities of professional basketball. Draymond Green's future will not be decided by a lingering hug or nostalgic frustration. It will be decided by return on investment. It will be decided by whether Mike Dunleavy Jr. can mathematically upgrade the roster's geometry by trading Draymond. If an elite championship-level upgrade presents itself, if the Warriors can acquire a player who elevates them back to contention, then Dunleavy will execute that maneuver with absolute zero hesitation. But until an actual corporate upgrade presents itself, until a trade becomes available that mathematically improves the roster, Draymond Green remains the indispensable, chaotic anchor of the franchise. He remains a player who makes everyone around him better. He remains a defensive anchor. He remains a connective tissue that holds the Warrior system together. And no amount of post-game emotion or nostalgic frustration is going to change that mathematical reality. So here's what I need from you. Hit that like button right now. because this is a kind of ruthless, data-driven analysis that separates people who actually understand NBA roster construction from casual fans who get seduced by emotional narratives and dramatic storylines. Leave a comment below telling me whether you think the Warriors should trade Draymond Green or keep the core together. And subscribe to this channel, because we're going to keep breaking down these organizational decisions, these trade rumors, and these front office moves that determine whether franchises are competing for championships or slowly fading into irrelevance. The spreadsheets don't lie. The mathematics always win. Stay locked in.